Holy flashbacks, Batman. This episode had a very, very well done flashback sequence that just covers all of how Fire Company 8 started and the mentality behind what formed it and all of that. And they covered all of that and still had time to fit in an introduction to Fire Company 7. That was awesome. So let's just get right into episode, 11 of Fire Force. So one of the things right out of the gate was that the whole story got started when we were being told that they discovered some fire report way back when Maki and Iris first joined. And with that, they kind of go, oh yeah, I never asked how Fire Company 8 got formed. And Obi gives Hinoa gives him an order to tell them the story, the backstory. And he did a phenomenal job. But yeah, we cover a lot of bases in this. So let's just start with Hinoa then. So Hinoa was actually a sergeant in the army for this, I guess, for Tokyo. And we actually see that he previously had a friend in there who he, I guess, confided in, talked with. But he was still very very blunt, which I kind of appreciate that in a character where he's just very blunt but has a caring heart. And they do kind of play into that really well in the fact that, like, so we see Maki and we're introduced to her and that she served under Hinoa, and Hinoa was just very harsh, saying that she's still a princess. She's, she got in because of her dad and all that kind of stuff. And his friend was saying that he's got a kind heart. And it's shown that he has a kind heart because he literally takes both trays to go and bust them before it wasn't even something that they asked. He just did it without a second thought. And that is something they play into a lot more in this episode specifically, but I feel like it's something they'll play into even more with later episodes. And they've kind of played into it with some current episodes as well, actually. It is also kind of funny to see Maki, like, scrawny. Like, they drew her kind of scrawnier than normal because she was still training really well, which is, I guess, how she got as strong as she was. But yeah, she definitely, was drawn scrawnier. Anyway, Hinoa's friend recommends that he go and get his weapon baptized, something that the Fire Force does, but that the Army doesn't really do. And with that, Hinoa, of course, is just like, I'm not going to do that. It's not going to make a difference, religion or not, or baptism or not, it's not going to make a difference in how a gun fires. And this really gets played into even more later in this episode. They introduce and play off a lot of things in just one episode, in this very episode, so it's kind of interesting to see how they do that. That specific mentioning, though, of them baptizing their weapons is played off of almost immediately afterwards, because, of course, his buddy makes the comment of, if you go infernal, what would you rather be shot with? I'd prefer to be shot, or wouldn't you rather be shot with the baptized weapon? And then his buddy later in this very episode turns infernal, and as a result, Hinoa goes to shoot him, but the problem is he can't, and he hesitates. We find out later he hesitates and doesn't because his weapon wasn't baptized, and he felt as though it would have been wrong. Now, that doesn't stop the rest of the army from barging in and unloading on the poor dude because, well, he was on fire and he's dead now. But we see, of course, a little more of Hinoa play. They play into Hinoa's big heart, even though he's very stoic and very strict. And after Hinoa's bunkmate and buddy is dead, or, well, taken out by the army, Hinoa actually gets his baptized weapon, and he carries it around with him and uses it later in this very episode, because during that sort of brief period after the first Infernal with his bunkmate, another Infernal, two more Infernals actually, happen. And both of those Infernals happen in an area where Hinoa happens to be. And this is where we actually see Obi and what he did previously, which was that he was just a regular firefighter. I guess because he wasn't a pyrokinetic, he couldn't be, or rather, I guess, wasn't seen as somebody capable of being a Special Fire Forces captain, or any member of the Special Fire Forces for that matter. So he's just a firefighter, and the fire company shows up, and they have a sort of weird points system that we discover, because essentially there's a docile Infernal and a very belligerent and active Infernal running around in the perimeter that they set. And that, from everything, they do a really good job with this, because everything that we've learned with the way Obi treats these Infernals, the way that he sees his job, it's not something to be enjoyed. They say to try to keep their spirits up, they have a points system. But when you're killing something, it's not meant for, you're not meant to have a good time when you kill something like that. And that really kind of points to Obi's moral compass and how he acts and what he believes in, which I really like the fact that that's a very consistent trait with him. Though with two Infernals, they go after the more belligerent one, try to find it and take it out. And the wife of the one who is docile, she says, he's patiently waiting, enduring the flames. And with that, they just say there's nothing we can do, and she has to sort of just sit and wait. And what ends up happening is Obi steps in, and Hinawa steps in, because Obi offers to end the suffering of her husband, and Hinawa steps in to help. And when they get to the actual scene of the fire, Obi, of course, says that, if it's blue stripe territory, so if they're caught in there, they'll be punished. And we see a similarity in mentality between Obi and Hinawa, because both of them are of the mindset of, these Infernals are suffering, they need to be put to rest. But they both also understand that it is somebody who was alive who is now being killed. And with that, while Obi's saying, we're going to get punished for this if we get caught, Hinawa doesn't care. He's like, it's nothing compared to what they're going through in there, and he goes right through. And I love that initial moment of realization where they both have this same mentality about how they deal with these Infernals. I like that, and I love the fact that it's what Company 8 was started, like how Company 8 was started and the foundations it was started on. And once they find the Infernal, he is literally just sitting there waiting, and we have, of course, this moment with Hinawa where he steps forward as Obi's prepping to take this guy out. Hinawa steps forward and offers to do it for him, and Hinawa is told by Obi that he is a very kind person, which brings back memories of his bunkmate and his friend, and he starts to tear up, and then he hardens himself and fires the gun. But it definitely shows that he is, at his core, a very nice person, but he's very strict in his mannerisms and personality, which has nothing really to do with the fact that he's nice. He's just very nice in a way that is shown in different ways than what I think most people are used to. I mean, a perfect example was the very last episode. We see that he cares for everybody in Fire Company 8, and he loves Fire Company 8, and we see that portrayed perfectly when he talks with Shinra. So seeing it even as far back as when he was in the army is just so awesome, and I love the fact that it is that consistent in the storytelling. Once everything's all said and done, we now have the two of them standing outside of the building where the Infernal was at, and it's pretty much settled, I guess, in Obi's mind. He's going to start a fire company when he's able, and when he is able, he's going to recruit Hinawa, because he's tired of seeing the world burn down around him. Now, after that, we cut to a few years later, 2 years later, actually, and we now have Fire Company 8 being established in a rundown facility that is currently their home base. And it is kind of funny that that's where Fire Company 8 is and still is, and where it started, and they haven't done any real improvements other than just make it livable, but it's cool and I like it. And while they are establishing this, Obi asks, if he has any recruits in mind, and he brings up Maki, because of the fact that Maki is a very kind person who doesn't really have the heart to fight people. She is very strong, very capable, but doesn't have the heart to fight people. She wants to, she would be better fighting Infernals. And that actually is really touching to Maki, which I love because of the fact that she's such a nice character. She's still best girl to me. I'm just going to say that, and it's still the case. But yeah, she is all like flustered. She loves that. She's just like, I thought I was here because I was, strong enough to be a meat shield, but no, she was brought in for a very nice reason. Now, once the backstory is finished, we get into what I mentioned earlier, which is the rest of the story, which takes place presently. We're not in flashback territory anymore, but yeah, this is where things are very interesting, very different, and we get. Well, first off, I get ahead of myself way too much here. First off, the story that we know so far about the evangelist and everything that's going on, the reason for the flashback at the very beginning was talking about an infernal incident that they had way back. It was the first infernal incident, I believe they said the first infernal incident that they dealt with as Fire Company 8. And the infernal was in white robes. So that is potentially a lead on where, or one of the members of the Infernal and how, or one of the members of the White Robes, White Clad, my goodness, I can't talk. One of the members of the White Clad, as far back as when Fire Company 8 started. So that's really saying something. They've been around a while. In fact, I guess they've been around for a very long time, considering that, Shinra's brother is a member. So at least probably 12 to 13 years. Now, once we're done with that, we get into what I was starting to get into when I was getting ahead of myself, which is we now get to see the new Fire Company 7, well, a new territory to us, but Fire Company 7's turf. We also then finally get to see the well-demonstrated abilities and the very powerful abilities of their fire captain, Shinmon. He's very powerful. And with that power, we actually see that his eyes represent something. It's actually very cool. I love those little subtle details. So, number one, we have him. He's very much, in a way, like Hinawa. He's very, non-caring on the outside. He seems like he's very impersonable, or not. He's not as strict as Hinawa, but he's definitely impersonal and very, kind of distant. But he cares a lot. He has a lot of heart. He really cares about the people around him. And this is demonstrated with the older lady who gives him snacks. We give that demonstration, or we get that demonstration with the way he deals with Infernals. All of it. And it's just such a cool trait for characters in general, and I like that. He also has two little, I don't know if they're his little sisters or what, they're little coin-eyed characters. They look like little yens in their eyes, but they are some pretty sharp-tongued little characters, I gotta say, and I was kind of laughing when they were on the screen because just their demeanor is very funny. And seeing the way that the area around Fire Company 7 is set up is actually really cool because we get sort of the more modern style Tokyo with Fire Company 8, 1, all these other companies. They're very modern, almost like we get almost an Anglo-American style with Fire Company 1. Looks a lot more like a Catholic church you'd see here in the States or in some other more Western cultures. But with this in Fire Company 7's territory, we get a very traditional Japanese-looking setup with the older houses, the temples, all these different styles that kind of all look like a traditional older Japanese city. It's very cool to see. It's just those little attentions to detail that I love. Now, of course, Fire Company 7, they are, of course, a fire company, so they are under investigation by Fire Company 8, and that's when Fire Company 8 shows up. And in that same instance, we also have an Infernal happen. And with this Infernal happening, it's one of the characters who we met early on in the first introduction with Shinmon, and we then get to see the demonstration of Shinmon's incredible abilities and a demonstration of his heart. So he basically lights up these mop things and destroys an entire massive chunk of the city, and destroys even more of the city. We learn that this is sort of their tradition. We have the sister pray for the Infernals with Company 8, and their tradition is to destroy massive sections of the city and cause a big mess whenever there's an Infernal for some reason. But we now know that Shinmon's ability involves a second-gen and third-gen pyrokinetic ability kind of mashed together. I think it was a compound soldier or something like that, but essentially the idea is that he can create fire on his own like a third-gen pyrokinetic, but he can manipulate the fire the same way a second generation can. So that means that he is insanely powerful and can do all of these crazy attacks and tricks and everything with fire that no third or second gen can do on their own. And with this massive amount of destruction, Shinmon finally puts the Infernal to rest and, says, way to hang in there. And that little moment shows how much he cares about the people in his city and how much the people in his city care about him. And the older lady that Shinra was with even says, we would rather die by his hand if we go infernal. It's very touching, very nice to see that. And it puts a whole new perspective on his character because he doesn't care, but he does. He cares a lot, like a ton, but he doesn't put it out front. He is a very traditional sort of closed off but cares about people in his own way sort of character, and I like that. And once it's all done, he finally eats one of the sweets that the older lady gave him, even though he said he didn't like sweets and still complains about it at the end. But I think that's really funny that he he is very subtly caring, and it's a very cool character trait. I don't know. I really like Shinmon after this. He seemed like a bit of a jerk in the last episode that we had, but this was different. This was very different, and he was a very nice, cool character. Overall, though, this whole episode really played into specific character traits for each of the characters, got a ton of backstory. Holy crap, it's a ton of backstory. And we even with all the backstory, we still managed to get an entire introduction to Fire Company 7 and their territory and how they operate. Like, this was a very efficient episode, and it was done very well. And I'm just really excited to see what's going to happen with the next episode, though I think there's a break. There's like a 2-week break going on with Fire Force, if I remember correctly. Somebody let me know in the comments if I'm right or not. But either way, guys, I really hope you're enjoying this. I am loving every minute of this series. It is so good. Hope you guys are too. And apart from that, I hope you guys like this, and I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure to be there and have a good one.